Austin, Texas. High up in a university tower, a sniper shoots at unsuspecting victims in the plaza below as scores of students flee.
Police have apprehended a lone gunman in an attempt on the life of President Ronald Reagan outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C.
6-hour standoff with police. William Cruz is accused of a violent murder rampage that killed 6 people, including 2 policemen.
Jeffrey Dahmer stands convicted of strangling and dismembering 17 young men and boys throughout the greater Milwaukee area.
Charged with the raping and killing of a 7-year-old girl in a woman's bathroom.
Life imprisonment for drowning her 5 children. Family bath sentences
for the slayings of his mother.
The bludgeoning death of her 2 young sons.
Custody for the stabbing death of his daughter.
Less than 3 months before the murders.
Police department? Yeah. I just killed my 2 daughters.
Sir?
Yeah.
Tell me what happened. Okay, what's going on right now?
I just freaked out and killed them.
Are you on medication?
Yeah.
What kind of meds are you on, sir?
I'm on antidepressants.
I have to say, whenever I read in the newspaper of some violent act, one of the first questions I ask is, was the person on medications?
Virginia Tech or the school shootings or the... my first thought is always, I wonder what drug he was taking.
There are side effects to the use of drugs, and also very damaging and dangerous long-term effects, which psychiatrists often don't consider as being important.
They induce violence, they induce self-violence, they induce distortions of reality leading to hallucinations, they induce a whole variety of psychiatric problems, which are then typically treated with more psychiatric drugs.
We're not talking about a rash, we're not talking about dry mouth, we're not talking about nausea. We're talking about sudden, compulsive, overwhelming suicidal or homicidal urges. We're talking about violent deaths. We're talking about crippling injuries.
Psychiatric drugs are rampant in society today. It's become really an epidemic.
The first drug that they put him on, I did not like it. He had a very bad reaction. He became a completely different person. He was very, as you would say, aggressive.
He became obsessive compulsive, paranoid about bad guys, afraid of dying. He started sniffing his hand 20 to 30 times a minute, out of control rages.
He couldn't think straight, he couldn't act straight. It made him irritable, it made him violent.
At one point he threatened to kill himself and to kill me, and he was only 6 or 7 years old.
From the moment that I started taking these drugs and to the moment that I stopped, all that happened in my life was things got worse. Depression got worse, the anger got worse, the outbursts got worse.
I had no idea what was happening to me. I would start quivering and shaking. I would drop onto the ground. Literally, I could not control anything.
Within 4 hours of taking 25 milligrams of Zoloft, I was standing on a balcony at a church. And again, there was the thinking, I'm going to jump.
The psychiatrists have carved out a great niche for themselves in the prescribing of drugs, but if you look at the history of treating people for mental and psychological disorders, it's a history fraught with things that don't work.
They're not helping people with drugs, and they're not looking out for harming people. They're ignoring the harm that's coming from all of these drugs.
We see suicidal thoughts, we see suicide, we see profound depression, mood swings.
This is 911. Who is this? Where is your sister? What is she trying to do? Take pills?
What?
Is she
No, my dad told me. No, you're not going to go No, you're not going to go today.
want to think that a drug could affect someone's behavior in that way, but it does. It happens all the time.
Suicide is just one in a long list of possible side effects of the medications that the doctors will seldom link to the medication, but instead blame it on the patient.
What's the cause of death going to be written? Not going to be written that the drug had anything to do with the death. It's going to be recorded as a suicide.
There's not a single psychiatric drug out there that's going to fix a problem. At best, it's going to cover up symptoms. At worst, it might kill you.
She went to get the laundry, his laundry, which hangs from a hook in Matt's closet. And instead of finding the laundry, she found her son.
By the time he died, he was really mutilating himself. He carved hate into his thigh.
He had gone into his closet that night, tied a rope around his closet rod, put it around his neck, shut the light off, knelt down.
I ran back to him and I touched his back and I says, "No, honey, he's cold, he's gone."
I'm as certain as I can be that Celexa killed my daughter.
I will always blame my son's death on psychiatric drugs.
Whenever a school shooter is taking a drug, it is, you know, the press don't get the information. If they ask about it, they're told this is private information. So the public is kept in the dark about the drugging of these kids that leads to this violence.
You have to ask yourself, how much help can these drugs be to somebody if they start experiencing these side effects of extreme anxiety, a desire to kill themselves, desire to kill others? What kind of help is that for the person?
Did you see these kinds of incidences in the 1960s or pre-1960? Was anybody shooting up their classrooms? There were guns. We didn't have as many gun control laws then as we do now. No, we didn't. So what's different? The psychotropic drugs, that's what's different.
These psychiatrists are, in a sense, crippling people. At the same time, they claim to be treating them.
They are mainly just drug pushers. You go on this drug, if it doesn't help, you can try this one. And if that doesn't work, you can try this one.
This is one incredible money-generating machine when this is your approach to treating people.
It's about making money. It's not about getting people better or helping people in a service industry or helping people feel well.
More than anything else, even more horrific than all the lives lost as a result of this callous profit-seeking, is the notion that our country is being destroyed.
What we see in the homicides and the suicides is only the tip of the iceberg compared to exactly what's happening to people out there.
Wake up before it's too late.
Intricate names given the medicines are used to cover up the matter so that none will know what is given them as remedies unless they obtain a dictionary to find out the meaning of these names. For example, mercury is now called thimerosal, hydrargyrum, and a multitude of other names. This was the same tactic used by witches to disguise their poisonous potions. What we render a witch, according to our modern notions of witchcraft, Philo and Josephus understood of a poisoner, or of one who attempted by secret and unlawful drugs or philtra to take away the senses or the lives of men. In the fairy tales, we have mental pictures of witches stirring their potion and throwing in all kinds of terrible ingredients. This practice has come down to us today from Egyptian medicine and paganism to the modern pharmaceutical and vaccine industry, as illustrated in this 1899 picture taken from a university yearbook. The ancient Egyptian medicines were made out of animal products as well as toxic materials apart from natural ingredients commonly found in the country. Animal parts sometimes included brain, liver, or even bile, which was utilized as magical remedies and worked as a magical potion to cure the patient. Toxic minerals like arsenic or copper, along with lead, when used with caution by an experienced physician, and were considered very effective in curing different ailments. To judge from the variety of recipes in medical text, any medication would involve fairly revolting ingredients. Dung from various animals, fat from cats, fly droppings, and even cooked mice are just a small selection of the range of remedies that the Egyptian doctor could recommend as treatment. Egyptians were also known to use crocodile dung in their medications. Now, while this sounds disgusting to us, modern medicine is really no different from these ancient practices, except for the fact that recently some ingredients have been compounded synthetically instead of using the original source. Some have been discontinued due, ironically, to toxic side effects. Some, however, are still in use. Still others are being tested for possible future use. Doctors go to great lengths to disguise the fact that they are practicing a black art rather than a science. The medical profession has created a pseudoscience of mammoth proportions, and today's doctors rely on a vast variety of instruments and tests and pieces of equipment with which to explain and dignify their interventions. Even today we have babies being sacrificed to Moloch through the barbaric practice of abortion, one of which, known as HEK 293 or human embryonic kidney 293 cells, has been used for years for pharmaceutical research and to make various products. Concerning the black art or sorcery connection, some doctors will admit without embarrassment that they indeed invoke the spirits in their practice. Dr. Raymond Abomsawin relates an experience that he had with a medical doctor at an international health convention in Toronto, Canada.
A few minutes later, I got a tug on my shirt from this guy behind me. And I turned around and he says, "What do you mean talking about the spirits?" He says, "I never prescribe a drug." This is a medical doctor. "I never prescribe a drug without first consulting the spirits."
What are we doing to our child when we give them Seroquel, Risperdal, Zyprexa, Malaril, or any one of these other drugs? These drugs impair the brain specifically by blocking the transmission to the frontal lobes of the brain. That's what makes us love and hate. It makes us prejudiced and generous. It makes us think abstractly. It gives us judgment. It's the human being. When you give one of those drugs, we reduce the personhood with these drugs even more profoundly than with the stimulant drugs. We disable their brains. It's a chemical lobotomy, and that's not a metaphor. That's a fact.
So when someone's actually addicted in a craving state, they lose the ability to exercise choice. In other words, draw upon morals and values and the things that really are meaningful in their life.
Drug side effects are so toxic that people are dying by the minute. The Parliament of Canada website states, "All drugs cause adverse reactions, not some, all, and many are deadly." The president and founder of Eli Lilly once said, "Any drug without toxic side effects is not a drug at all." Rare means between 1 out of 1,000 and 1 out of 10,000, so take no comfort with rare side effects. An unfortunate side effect of modern medicine is an assault on the mind. We now realize pharmaceuticals are just as addictive as the street drugs, and some have caused deadly results, including suicides and homicides.
The label itself, the disorder, is what is blamed for the side effects, when in reality it's the drug that is causing the side effect. It is the drug that is the problem.
Drugs such as the antidepressant prescribed to Woody Witzak, who took it not for any mental complaint, but to help him sleep.
My husband and I, Tim, his nickname Woody, we were married just 2 months shy of 10 years, so we've had a long life together. And Woody was a guy who was healthy. He was a big runner. He's never had a history of depression or any other so-called mental illness. He was given Zoloft for insomnia. I find Woody one night completely sweat through his shirt in fetal position, kept going, "Kim, you gotta help me, I don't know what's happening to me. It's like my head's outside my body looking in. Kim, help me, help me." We did breathing, listened to music, prayed, anything to calm him down from this head outside his body feeling. And a week later, he was found dead, hanging. A guy who loved life.
Psychiatrists claim their drugs save lives, but according to their own studies, psychotropic drugs double the risk of suicide, with one increasing the risk by a factor of almost 7.
A lot of people don't realize that with chemotherapy, after you're done with the treatment, the chemotherapy lies dormant in your fat cells, and then a year later re-emerges. So you have that cellular breakdown all over again. You lose your hair, you have, all your organs and everything start breaking down. And
his death certificate reads, respiratory arrest due to chronic toxicity of chemotherapy. That says it all.
yeah.
It says it all.
Deanna Kinnaman's brother, Bud, was given 2 kinds of narcotics following surgery for sleep apnea. He died in bed his first night home.
There was too much fentanyl in his system, and I said to the coroner, so basically he was poisoned. And he said, yes, he was poisoned.
We put her back on Brzezinski's. By the way, at the objections of our doctors, for some reason felt that it had failed her. We put her back on. Within 9 weeks, the tumor was completely gone. She died last July of neurological necrosis. Her brain fell apart from the radiation. The autopsy showed that she was completely cancer-free. Out of 52 cases of that disease ever, no one died cancer-free, just Chrissy. So she didn't die of a terminal illness. She died of my inability to care for her properly, and she died from bad advice. She died because there's a government institution that disseminates false information and is not looking out for the welfare of the people. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I swore an oath 11 years ago, and I think most of us in this room swore it at one time or another, to uphold the Constitution. It says life right in the beginning.
Why would the pharmaceutical industry and the medical profession push poisonous drugs and dangerous treatments that can seriously injure or even kill people?
And when you follow the money, you realize that there is no money in health. There's big money in disease.
You have doctors spending 3 years learning how to do chemotherapy radiation. You have specialist radio-oncology. You have cancer surgeons. You have cancer oncology. So you have this entire industry built on the paradigm of purging the body. Even though we find that that doesn't work, that industry is not going to just pack up and go away.
Does the track record of the pharmaceutical and the medical industry show honesty?
One of the most unethical practices we're aware of is ghostwriting of journal articles, where somebody at the pharmaceutical company will write the paper and the academic physician will put his name on it and get it published in a major journal when he maybe changed 3 or 4 words in the whole article, and the article was basically written as a marketing tool by the drug company, and yet this academic puts his name on it as if he's the author.
We offered trips on some occasions to come out and hear a 2-hour talk, but it happened to be on a nice island in Hawaii.
There were a lot of things that we did day in and day out to try to get the doctors to write our drugs, or in my case, to write for the psychiatric drugs. We did a lot of lunches and dinners, and we brought in speakers, and those speakers were obviously paid by us, and we would wave, renowned studies at them from renowned journals. But of course, we would never say that these studies were paid for by our company, and that it was written by a ghostwriter who was paid by our company, or that our company tends to do a ton of advertising within that particular medical journal. We would never say that.
They use what I call statistical contortionism. Basically just skew the numbers, make everything look fantastic, you hide the bad numbers.
They've already got a drug that's approved on the shelf. They can just pull it off the shelf, rename it, repackage it, and say, look, we've got a new drug for a new illness.
When Prozac's patent ran out, that Eli Lilly had to look for a new source of profits. So all they did was change the name of the drug from Prozac to Serafem, change the color of the pill from green to pink, and marketed it for PMDD, which is newly introduced into this book.